Congratulations, you've made it all the way to the end. Someone with better planning skills might have released the first video in the series and watched how it did before devoting hundreds of man-hours to the production of the rest of these videos. But luckily, I'm not that kind of nerd. I'm a nerd with very poor planning skills. So if you stuck with these videos for this long, thank you, seriously. And if you unsubscribed when the first video came out, you are dead to me. Spectre, or as the British call it, Spectre, is the latest James Bond movie at time of writing. It's got Daniel Craig, who's a great actor, and a great Bond. It's got Christoph Waltz as the villain, who is also a good actor. It has Léa Seydoux, who is a good actor. It's directed by Sam Mendes, a proven director. All of these components should make for a slam dunk. But instead,
I could probably make a 30-minute video just about this gun barrel sequence, but for the sake of brevity, I hate it.
I don't hate Spectre. I don't even know if I'd say it sucks. It's like a step above sucks. It blows.
Even in trailers for Mendes' new films, he is now remembered as the director of Skyfall. It never says the director of Spectre.
Now I don't even really know what people like about this one. At best, it's bland, and at worst, it's so stupid you're desperate for your own set of tiny drills to burrow into your brain to remove all memory of it. God almighty. Damn it, how could this have happened?
to understand how this could have happened, we need to go back. Way back. All the way back to 2006. After Die Another Day was received much in the same way Marie Antoinette's hairdo was received by the French people, the filmmakers took some time, refocused, and made Casino Royale the best received Bond film to date. If you're familiar with the James Bond series, you know that the filmmakers are really good at refocusing the series and making quality movies. But when it comes to following those movies up, not so much. Quantum of Solace is the only James Bond movie I consider to be poorly produced. Notice how intense this is because the camera's shaking? Not intense enough. More, goddammit. If your movie doesn't look like it's being shot during a Category 7 earthquake, you have failed as a director. Horses! That scene at the opera is so dumb. It's like all these powerful members of a secret society all have their meetings at the opera, an open-aired, loud, highly public event. Why not have the meeting in like a hotel conference room across the street? Then you have Skyfall, which I like to call the Federal Reserve, because it just printed money. But it's The Dark Knight. Have you seen The Dark Knight? You've seen Skyfall.
Who is that? Well, well, if it isn't our old friend,
The Dark Knight. But they had a good thing going. They had successfully moved on from Casino Royale, and Craig's Bond was fast on his way to becoming a fan favorite. But then... So, let's talk about Spectre. The movie opens with a standard gun barrel sequence. Okay, nothing out of the ordinary there. The dead are alive. Well, no they're not. It's not, like, bad, it's just weird. It's not like there's any information in this, like the Star Wars crawl, which is efficient, or like a theme of the movie in a quote. Like, when you go for revenge, make sure to dig 2 graves. And then the seed fades in and we're in Mexico. How do we know we're in Mexico? Well, it's got the sepia filter on. Couldn't you tell? A lot of people have started complaining about this in movies, but this is just what Mexico looks like. So anyway, the camera pans to the street and down to this couple in skull masks that are obviously James Bond and some girl, and the camera follows them, and then it keeps following them. This is another recent trend in movies, the long take. I see these more and more in movies. Even Revenge of the Sith opened with a long take. Now, what's the difference between these long takes and something like Children of Men or Goodfellas? Because not all long takes are created equal, something Sam Mendes would prove again in 1917. In Goodfellas, director Martin Scorsese uses the long take to draw you into Henry Hill's lifestyle. You're supposed to feel enamored with him and what he is by feeling like you're a part of it. The camera stays right by Ray Liotta's shoulder through the whole take. You're not just watching the movie, you're in the scene with these characters. There's an incredible amount of coordination to be able to pull this off in such a narrow space. Here, the camera descends from the fucking sky, floats down to the street on a magical cloud, then goes up the stairs, looks at the girl while James Bond changes into an entirely different suit. Then it flies back up to the sky and then fucks around in the air for a bit before landing here. Do you see the difference? Bond also has this too cool for school attitude that really just reminds me that I'm watching a movie. I mean, what is happening here? James Bond is gonna go fucking murder someone. It feels like I'm watching him commute to the bank. You know what would be more interesting? Watching him jump around, try to stay out of sight, do some actual spy shit. There's no tension in the scene. Okay, so at this point, you can tell that I'm kind of down on this movie. So I just want to put a disclaimer here. I think it's almost really good. I think if like a really strong editor came in during the writing process and Daniel Craig was more identified with sarcasm, it could have worked. As it is now, we have a bland script, a serious Bond in a campy movie, and a supporting cast given very little to do. And you know what, I think that pretty much sums it up. I haven't even talked about the title sequences yet. Those are a pretty big staple of James Bond movies. Maybe by talking about those, I can explain why I don't like this one very much. You have two flavors of title sequence. You have James Bond imagery and Randy Random. Live and Let Die is a Randy Random. It's got a flaming skull, some dancing girls, whatever the fuck this is. Die Another Day is James Bond imagery. It's fucking depressing James Bond imagery. It's James Bond being tortured for 4.5 minutes. That's not what I signed up for in my fun escapist fantasy movie. But in Spectre, they decided to like combine those two schools. You have James Bond paired with like tentacle porn, and then you have this fucking awful Sam Smith song played over it. Meanwhile, you go back one movie and you have Adele and a great title sequence with a lot of good and relevant imagery. Casino Royale 2, and that looks like a game of Super Hot. By the way, if you're interested, Radiohead proposed 2 songs for this movie, Spectre and Man of War, both of which would have been better than What About Love? Now that I breathe, I was not pain and suffocating. I wanna feel love. The first 30 seconds are good, but then it goes into Would I risk it all? No. And it's just, I can't take this seriously. It doesn't match any of this. If you want to have an exploding skull, you've got to have some badass music. Live and let die. Christoph Waltz with the tentacles always cracks me up. Okay, we're not there yet. Soon though.
If anything happens to me, 007, I need you to do something. Find a man called Marco Sciarra. Kill him. And don't miss the funeral.
Gee, thanks for sitting on that, M. If you hadn't died, would you have let that terrorist attack happen? Then we're introduced to C. The British are combining MI5 and MI6 to make MI11 or something, but it's also privately backed, which sounds like a terrible idea, which sounds like a great idea. Let's privatize national security. Did Margaret Thatcher come back? I thought she liked Bond.
Well, really, Mr. Bond.
I don't know about this, but more importantly, I don't care. It's like that subplot in The Man with the Golden Gun where they can't shut up about the fucking energy crisis. They're doing that Mission Impossible thing where their agency is always in jeopardy of getting cut, so they have to convince their boss that they have value.
Read a dossier last year on how the 00 program was obsolete.
And yeah, that's great for creating drama, but it's not exactly fun. It's all the fun and excitement of going to a redundancy meeting. So they have to convince their boss they have value, except C is a bad guy, so really they just have to kill him. I'm gonna plow through all this because it really doesn't matter, but Q injects Bond with the tracker and gives him an explosive watch. What happened to not going in for that anymore?
Were you expecting an exploding pen? We don't really go in for that anymore.
He's not even going on a mission. As far as Q knows, he's been suspended. Every disgruntled and suspended employee gets an explosive wristwatch. Bond threatens Q's cats not to use the tracker.
Then I suggest you trust me. For the sake of the cats.
Probably shouldn't have given him explosives then, mate. Bond goes to Rome and aggressively sleeps with Monica Bellucci. Then he shows up at a super secret high security meeting where all you need to get in is a ring you can get on Amazon for $9. The meeting is about to kick off when a mysterious figure enters the room. So this is supposed to be the scene where we get a sense of the scale of the organization and how much they fear Franz Oberhauser. Now, let me explain to you why this scene doesn't work. Welcome to Production Design 101. I'm your professor, some asshole on the internet. Today's lesson, how to make your villain intimidating through set design. Let's look at this Ken Adams set from Thunderball. Notice how Blofeld is sitting in an elevated position? He's the highest person in the room. He's also the only one allowed to bring his pet. Maybe it's his service animal, I don't know. In Spectre, he's low to the ground. You gotta give intimidating people the high ground. Fucking George Lucas knew that.
It's over, Anakin! I have the high ground!
It's not just that. He has other people talk for him. He's like whispering at someone. It's like he has laryngitis. I guess someone thought this would be intimidating, but it just comes across as really weak and pathetic. He has this really bad lighting. Like, that's just a shitty spot to sit at. He probably can't see anything. And then when it's time for someone to die, because it's a Spectre meeting, and I'm pretty sure that's in their bylaws, Dave Bautista just comes out and Bautista bombs someone. In Thunderball, Blofeld kills a guy with his own chair. And people sit in these chairs of their own free will because of how much they respect and fear him. If I was at this meeting, why would I ever be scared of this guy? I would just think, man, I wish they would turn on the fucking lights. I can't see dick. Are they dim so we can't see it's Christoph Waltz? We already know it's him. His face was all over the fucking poster. Bond leaves because Franz sees him and we got this car chase with Dave Bautista. And it's kind of boring. Bond calls Moneypenny, and occasionally we switch to her perspective, which completely breaks up the tension of the chase. The production design is also pretty bad here. We have this beautiful car, and then like 4 switches right out of the drawers of Radio Shack duct taped right on the dash. In every other James Bond film, the switches were built into the car. And now that I'm thinking about it, why the fuck was this switch linked to the radio? No. There's already a switch for that in the fucking car. This feels like such an Austin Powers moment, and it's not the last, but it's nice to finally see someone getting ejected by the ejector seat. The music is also really uninspired compared to the other Bond films.
You still there?
That's something that Craig-era Bonds have a problem with. Like, Casino Royale had some really good music. I like Vesper's song. The action scenes are rendered lifeless by this generic stock action music. Meanwhile, you got GoldenEye hitting you with this cacophonic clanging. On Her Majesty's Secret Service has one of the best scores of all time. This has actually become a big problem across most of Hollywood. Granted, not all of James Bond's music has been good. But at least it's memorable. In this age of endless competition for our attention, the biggest sin any piece of media can commit is being forgettable. The only time it even approaches interesting is when they're driving through Rome and it feels like a Mercedes-Benz commercial, and James Bond is out here doing fucking donuts in front of the Vatican like a mad lad going, "How's this for a dangerous depiction of violence, vulgarity, sadism, and sex?" Somehow, Bond ends up at this cabin in the middle of nowhere, and he finds the Pale King, Mr. White, dying from thallium poisoning. I really liked Mr. White. I wanted him to be the new Blofeld of the series. He was the one part of Quantum of Solace that I really enjoyed.
Well, Tosca isn't for everyone.
But here, he's like cast aside for Vault's Inspector. I'm really disappointed on how the writers and producers gave up on Quantum. I was interested in seeing where that thread went. I guess it leads here. Oh.
He's eating supper with your family.
Mr. White is like, "Oh no, James Bond, you have to help my hot daughter escape from Spectrum and Blofeld, and then she'll—" Wait, dude, you had me at hot daughter. But instead of Bond and White going on an adventure together like it's a fucking mismatched buddy cop comedy, he just shoots himself.
So long.
He's eating supper with your family.
Bond goes to the Alps where he meets Dr. Madeline Swan, a hot psychiatrist. She gets kidnapped by Drax, and Bond has to crash a plane through a barn to save her. Then he shoots this guy at the end, and it's like, that's so weak. Like, this should have been the resolution of the scene. It all just feels so unnatural and awkward. Like, you could have had him go through the windshield with Dave Bautista. Meanwhile, Q figures out that all of the previous Bond villains were members of the same super secret organization that all wore the same ring, and all added their DNA to all of those rings, I guess? Apparently they were all smaller district managers in the larger franchise of evil. Bond and Swan go to l'American Hotel in Tangier, and I'm just gonna skip over all this because it doesn't matter. There's a mouse.
I said you.
Don't know what that goddamn shit is, man. God fuck.
And they remind you of a better movie, and then they go on a train to somewhere. They push Dave Bautista out of the train.
Shoot.
What do we do now?
When I saw this in the theater, everyone laughed.
Good evening, sir. Sorry to interrupt your supper.
Oh my god, I don't care about these characters at all. It feels so awkward and forced. Like they had all these actors on standby, so they had to give them screen time for their SAG hours or something. Bond and Swan go to Oberhauser's crater in the desert, where he's aggressively overwatering his grass like a madman. He then reveals that he was the backer behind MI11. Gasp. Bond freaks out because he doesn't want Swan to know Mr. White shot himself.
The word of an assassin.
Turn this off.
This is important.
I said turn it off!
Like, she already knows he's dead. It's super weird. I think something got cut. A scene where Swan was like, "Boy, being made to watch a tape of my father shooting himself would have been so emotionally shattering that I would be completely catatonic." Like, that would explain this severe overacting.
I said turn it off!
So then Franz is like, "I'm gonna drill into your skull, mate, and then you're gonna forget everyone's face. That'll be the perfect revenge." And that's when we find out
Franz Oberhauser died 20 years ago, James. In an avalanche alongside his father.
Turn this off.
The man you're talking to now, the man inside your head, is Ernst Stafford Blofeld.
Catchy name.
Oh my god.
I said turn it off!
It's almost as bad as the Khan moment from Into Darkness.
My name is Khan.
Catchy name.
You probably know that James here lost his parents when he was young. But did you know that it was my father who helped him through this difficult time? Asked me to treat him as a brother.
So Bond and Blofeld are brothers, and he was responsible for everything in the last 3 movies.
Le Chiffre, Green, Silver.
It was all me, James. It's always been me, the author of all your pain.
But what does this actually add to the film? Do you have a deeper appreciation for Casino Royale or Quantum of Solace or Skyfall, knowing that James Bond's jealous brother is behind it all? So Blofeld formed Spectre because he wanted revenge against Bond for taking his dad? Or was it all just a massive coincidence? Like, what would have happened if Bond had become a pastry chef or something? Would Blofeld have franchised a Dunkin' Donuts across the street? This relationship adds nothing to the characters and may even detract from them. Bond and Blofeld are enemies not because their respective characters have incompatible beliefs, but because the capricious hands of fate made them brothers competing for dad's affection. Bond and Swan escape because Blofeld didn't take Bond's watch away before drilling into his fucking skull. Explosions, explosions, lasers, explosions. Getting his skull drilled into made him even stronger. Bond and the gang go back to London to stop C from activating his global surveillance program. But instead of like going to the military or blowing up a transformer or something, they have to break into the new MI-11 building to shut it down. Swan, who came all the fucking way from the desert, decides, alright, I'ma head out. But then Bond gets black-bagged and taken to the ruins of MI6. Blofeld has set up this elaborate funhouse with pictures he just printed off from his home printer, but Bond doesn't seem disturbed by this. He seems more annoyed, so he confronts Blofeld and they talk about essentially nothing. Hey look, he looks like Donald Pleasance. I wonder why that is. Bond finds Swan, they escape, M kills his boss. Thank God no one was working late at the office.
And now we know what C stands for. Careless.
When I saw this for the first time, I genuinely felt in my bones that Ralph Fiennes was going to say, "Cunt." Then Bond shoots down a helicopter with a pistol onto the bridge, and he's standing over Christoph Waltz, and he's like, "Do it." And Bond decides that he's going to follow the Jedi path. And then M comes over and arrests him, which is kind of lame, but whatever. Also, M introduces himself as the head of the 00 section.
Sir, this is a terrorist alert. Mallory, 00 section.
He's the head of MI6. Like, he forgot what his job was. So, like, for my money, I would just kill him. I get that people are going to say he doesn't want Swan to see him as a killer, but he's killed people in front of her before. Shit, they killed Dave Bautista together.
Shoot.
I'm just saying that this decision can really only have negative consequences, for both Bond and for us, the viewer. Conclusion. The worst part of this James Bond movie is probably James Bond. He's such a non-character. He goes to kill this guy because he gets an e-gram from his dead boss, and then he gets dragged around on this mystery, not because he's compelled to solve it by some outside antagonist, but because he doesn't seem to have anything better to do. In Skyfall, he wants to protect M. What's motivating him in Spectre? Doing his job? That would be fine, that's the motivation in a lot of Bond movies. But 1, this isn't his job, and he's disavowed. And 2, the Craig Bond has never once given a shit about his job. I guess he wanted to rescue Lea Seydoux, and I can't blame him for that one. But then at the end, he chooses not to kill Blofeld because he loves her? But like, does he? Daniel Craig has proven that he's a perfectly capable romantic actor, but he needed a better script. There were a lot of problems with the pre-production of this movie. Sony was involved in the script writing process, and we learned from the email hacks that the project was kind of a shit show. I mean, look at the production. You have this early script written by John Logan, who wrote fucking Star Trek Nemesis.
My name is Data. I am your brother.
Then they piled in 4 screenwriters to write for 9 actors under 2 studios who couldn't agree on anything. And then Sam Mendes is expected to bring all this together. It's not his fault. It's probably not anyone's fault. The project probably just ended up snowballing out of control. I said in my Die Another Day video that I wish James Bond was dead and I didn't have to see him again. In a way, that wish kind of came true, because even though the franchise continued, it's become completely alienated from what it once was. And this attempt to recapture its old, campy magic is missing the most critical aspect of what it's trying to capture. The passion. But more than that, the sarcasm. A James Bond movie should be about 50% passion and 50% sarcasm, but in this it feels like they have neither. I do not know how much longer this franchise is going to keep going. I mean, James Bond enters the public domain in 2034. For scale, we are temporally closer to anyone being able to make and sell James Bond related products than we are to the start of the US war in Afghanistan. If you live in Canada, he's already public domain. but if it were up to me, I would refocus the movies on the aspects that always worked for me. So what did we learn from all this? 1. Cast a versatile actor in the lead role. Don't just cast some arrogant fuck off the streets. Find someone who can craft a great performance around a very narrowly written character. Maybe a stage actor who can project his personality well. Use real stunts and real locations. None of this CGI bullshit. If you need to make the effects look better with the actors, by all means, but nothing will ever be more satisfying than watching Necros get booted out of a plane. 3. Alright, are you listening? Bit parts. If you have Judi Dench, use Judi Dench. If you don't have Judi Dench, leave these characters at home. I don't care about Moneypenny's sex life. I get you're paying for Ralph Fiennes, you want to use Ralph Fiennes, but please, just have him show up in one scene at the beginning and then one scene at the end. That's all we need. 4. Focus on the romance. If your goal is to write a romance between Bond and a human woman, you can't just trust the actors to fill in the blanks, you have to write romantic scenes for them to play in. 5. Don't be afraid to hire a really brilliant composer. Star Wars was saved thanks in part to an incredible score by John Williams. Alfred Hitchcock said that Psycho was 1/3 Bernard Herrmann's score. Find your John Barry. 6. Sets. Blade Runner 2049 had these amazing sets designed by Dennis Glasner. What else has this guy worked on? Oh, look at that. Quantum, Skyfall, and Spectre. So then why do these movies have such lackluster sets? Blade Runner is running around with its $20 million budget, most of which probably went to getting Harrison Ford out of bed. Meanwhile, Spectre is out here swinging around its $300 million budget, and all we can get is Meteorite in a Black Void, Facebook headquarters, an overexposed white void. Fuck realism, I want to see James Bond running through a hollowed out oil tanker fucking blowing people up. 7. Never, ever, 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 ever steal plot points from Austin Powers.
I have to protect my son.
Dad, I'm fine.
I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about him.
What? Dr. Evil's not your son. I am.
You both are.
What?
But honestly, that doesn't bother me as much as the other things on this list. My denial is stronger than any movie. There you go, Eon, that's the list. Now you'll never fuck it up again. Okay, that's it. It's finally over. I've been working on this for over a year. I can't believe it's over. I'm so tired. I'm looking forward to my next project. No. There's one more thing I need to talk about. Just one more job. And then I'm out of the game for good. I just want to say I don't hate the Craig era Bond movies. I realize that I've just talked about 2 movies that seem like, oh, he doesn't really like them that much. But no, I think GoldenEye is probably the best James Bond movie, next to maybe Casino Royale. They're just not as interesting to talk about as the movies that are bad. I like Pierce Brosnan. I like Daniel Craig. I think they do a good job.